Good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for those that have commented. Just thank you for the opportunity to come and present to you the Carolina Thread Trail Master Plan for Rowan County communities. I am Randy Gates. I am now with Stewart, is the company that actually did the plan, the consultant that worked on the plan. Prior to that, for 7 years, I worked for the Carolina Thread Trail. So I will be presenting on behalf of the author of the plan as well as the Carolina Thread Trail. And we also have someone here who is staff to the Carolina Thread Trail as well. So just want to touch on the background of the Carolina Thread Trail. It is a plan to connect 15 counties with trails and greenways. It really started back in 2005 when the Foundation for the Carolinas was looking for a regional environmental project. Along with the foundation and multiple community leaders from all of the 15 counties, they were looking at a discovery process to determine what the most pressing environmental needs of the region was. And that's what was born, the Carolina Thread Trail, the idea of connecting the communities with greenways and trails. So Catawba Lands Conservancy, who's the lead agency for the Carolina Thread Trail, along with the Trust for Public Land, came up with the idea of connecting these 15 counties. And in 2007, the Carolina Thread Trail was born. The map that you see, that is a concept map that was put together early on by asking the community leaders what destinations they would like to see connected with a regional trail system. And then from there, as we've gone through all of the 15 counties to do a planning process to determine where segments could be located, the map has changed slightly. But the idea is connecting the 15 counties, 11 counties in North Carolina, 4 counties in South Carolina, and ultimately reaching over 2.3 million people upon build out of this system. So just to touch on a regional update, this is what the Carolina Thread Trail staff calls the status map. You can see that 14 counties of the 15 have adopted plans for the Carolina Thread Trail. This is 86 local governments working together to adopt this plan. This does include the 10 communities here in Rowan County that have adopted as well. There are over 1,500 miles planned, trail miles throughout the system. Currently, there's over 220 miles that are on the ground. That's trails, natural surface trails, paved trails, also includes sidewalk connectors through the communities. So early on, back in 2009, shortly after, a few years after the Carolina Thread Trail, the idea was born. Staff and local leaders went around to local communities asking communities and counties to sign on. Just the concept of connecting communities within a county and working with your neighbors on establishing where the Carolina Thread Trail could possibly be located. In 2009, the first resolution here in the county was signed by the city of Salisbury. Shortly after, as was mentioned early on in one of the comments, a resolution to support the Carolina Thread Trail did come before the planning board here for Rowan County. It was not passed, and then it came before the Board of County Commissioners. We were not asked to do a presentation. We got wind that the resolution was on the agenda. We did come and speak in support as Carolina Thread Trail as an organization, but as was stated and was recently in the paper, it did not pass. Just kind of going through our timeline of what we did. The big issue back then was with eminent domain. We heard loud and clear what the issues from the county were, and the Carolina Thread Trail actually stepped up and put out a position statement on how the organization as a whole stands on the issue of eminent domain. And that stance is that the Carolina Thread Trail as an organization does not support the use of eminent domain. We know that lies with each individual elected board for every community, how they're going to treat that issue. But the organization as a whole does not support it. They can only do limit so much because the power does not lie with the Carolina Thread Trail, who's a nonprofit organization, but they can control where their funding goes. and they have stated that they will not fund any land acquisition that's from an unwilling property owner, nor will they fund any construction of trail along a property that has been taken from an unwilling property owner. And just to give an example, the town of Harrisburg, who the planning director is here, got here a little late, so couldn't sign up to speak. Harrisburg is a Carolina Thread Trail community. They're working with a neighborhood right now to acquire a piece of land along open space that's owned by a local homeowners association. By general statute, that requires the HOA, if it's owned by the homeowners, to have 80% vote. The town's trying to get this piece to own and develop a trail. Overall, the community's supportive, but they cannot get the 80% votes. They've went door to door, and there's people that just aren't filling it out. So Harrisburg looked at using friendly condemnation with the landowners to get that piece, called the Carolina Thread Trail to get their opinion, and the Carolina Thread Trail obviously stated the position on the use of eminent domain and said, we can't control what you're going to do, even though it is friendly, and they understand that the town is looking at that as a last resort, but they will not fund that land acquisition, and they're not going to fund construction of that piece of trail. So I just wanted to throw that out early on. And again, the planning director here in Harrisburg is here from Harrisburg and can add to that if you would like him to. We also requested, when we put together a steering committee, we requested to your former manager as well as your former chair of the commission that staff participate in the planning process for the Carolina Thread Trail. And we were turned down for that. But the communities, the 10 local communities within the county, wanted to push ahead with the planning process. They all signed resolutions of support. They're listed here with some other organizations. And so we kicked off a planning process. But just want to give you a little more of the history. So the planning process for the Carolina Thread Trail, a steering committee was formed. And in September 2013, a grant from the Carolina Thread Trail was given to Landis as kind of the lead agency, and all the other communities that wanted to participate in this planning process for the Carolina Thread Trail. And that came with a local match that came from all the local communities participating. Stewart, the company I'm now with, along with TPL, was hired to do all of the planning work, working with the local steering committee. A lot of public input went into this. Starting in January 2014, 4 different meetings across the county, as well as an online survey to gain input from the communities. And then again in July 2014, again another 4 meetings that we had the maps on display for community members to come and make comments. And now we're here in fall 2014 to now is when we've gone around making presentations to get the plan adopted. And as stated, all 10 communities within the county have adopted the plan. So just to touch a little more on the citizen input, early on with the online survey and the comments that we heard from people coming to the meetings, 78% of folks that gave us their information said that trails are very important for Rowan County as a whole. An additional 13% stated that trails are important. So not very important, but they are important to the community. And only 7% of those that gave us their input stated that trails are not important to the community. The input that we received stated that walking and biking were the top activities of those that wanted to participate on trails in the community, and noted that the most important benefits to them for a trail system is that of recreation, environmental benefits, and connecting the communities. We asked what destinations they'd like to see connected. The top destinations that we received were the Yadkin River, High Rock Lake, parks and other nature preserves that are existing, also existing trails and colleges here within the community. So again, going around, all 10 communities have adopted, and they've all expressed the need for the county to adopt so that connections between the communities can be made. So this is the plan for Rowan County as it pertains to the Carolina Thread Trail. This is, I want to note that these pink lines on the map are actually a 1/4 mile wide. And it's done that way because we didn't speak to every landowner. This was a high-level planning process. We were looking at how to connect destination A to destination B, knowing that there are many ways that can be done. It states on there that the routes depicted illustrate just connection opportunities. Over time, the exact routes will be determined based on ongoing dialogue with the community and interested landowners. So as a community starts working on a particular segment, and they're going through and they're going door to door and they're working with landowners on who's willing and who is not. When we come to a landowner that's not willing to participate, you find a way to work around. And that's been done time and time again through all of the 86 communities that are developing their segments of the Carolina Thread Trail. So this represents 107.8 miles of potential trail opportunity and an additional 69.7 miles of blueway. Approximately half of that is within the county jurisdiction. A lot of that's overlapping into the community ETJs, but I did want to note about 65 miles or so are within the county. 6.8 miles of what is proposed is actually existing already, whether it be Salisbury Greenway, some trail within Granite Quarry, Landis, and some other communities that have trail. 19 miles of that is along stream and riparian corridors. 14.3 is already on existing bike routes that have been adopted by Rowan County in the past. Jesse Day had mentioned that. And 51.3 are already, they're on existing roads. They're proposed along road right-of-ways so that we can work with NCDOT in the future on any road widenings or anything to have bike ped facilities added. What they're going to want to see is it's on an adopted plan. So one thing that we look closely at when we're looking at these routes is the connectivity and how we are allowing access to the community at large. So what we consider walking distance is 1/4 of a mile. You're likely to walk 1/4 of a mile somewhere. And what is connected within 1/4 of a mile of all those pink routes are 13 schools, 4 libraries, 2 colleges, and 54 other destinations that were identified by either the steering committee or the local input that we received. We consider access at 1/2 mile. So of those pink routes, 49.3% of all children within the county are within 1/2 mile of one of those proposed Carolina Thread Trail routes. 44.7% of all seniors in the county are within 1/2 mile. 61.7% of all low-income residents are within 1/2 mile. 47.1% of total residents are within 1/2 mile of the proposed Carolina Thread Trail. So why adopt this? Why should the county adopt this? And the main thing is for the benefits that a regional trail system can bring to a community. And I'm just going to touch on a few. You've heard through comments quite a few already. Health benefits, exercise, access to nature. I want to reference the 2014 health report for the county. The county sits 76 out of 100 counties on the overall health. So Rowan County is lower on the spectrum as it comes to health, and it identified a number of reasons why. But in order, it did mention to reduce obesity, you need accessible locations to exercise, and that is what the Carolina Thread Trail will bring. Economic benefits. Commissioner Chair Eds, I appreciate your comments within the Salisbury Post over the weekend when it comes to improving the quality of life here within the county, having a regional trail system that you offer to businesses that are coming in, to their workers, and to new citizens that are moving into the county. Trails are the #1 amenity when businesses are asked, why do you move somewhere? Trails, that's #1. There are studies showing increase in property values, increase in tourism. Want to note the tourism plan completion and connection, talking about how to better situate the county for tourism. All through that document, it mentions bike-friendly community, paddle trails or blueways, extending the Salisbury Greenway and expanding hiking opportunities, along with many other benefits that the Carolina Thread Trail can bring to the county. So what does adoption mean? first and foremost, I think for you as a board and knowing what the issues in the past have been, land acquisition for implementation of the plan would adhere to Article 4 of the county's Code of Ordinances. And I referenced that in the resolution of adoption that's before you. So that states that no property would be taken for economic development purposes, including trails, from an unwilling property owner. And again, the Carolina Thread Trail position statement backs that up, and we support that as an ordinance here in the county. Connecting communities. Adoption by the county would allow for those critical links to connect the towns within the county. Funding qualifies the county to receive catalytic funding from the Carolina Thread Trail in the form of grants. To date, $4.2 million has been awarded to communities through the Carolina Thread Trail's grants program. There in an account sits $450,000 just for Rowan County projects that's sitting there waiting for communities to apply for that funding. $27.5 million has been acquired in public funding for Carolina Thread Trail projects, and that's through federal, state, and local funding sources. Adoption of the plan does not commit the county to fund implementation. The plan could sit on the shelf, but you're gonna adopt those connections that will allow the communities to connect. And I hope the county would push ahead and we can use some of that Carolina Thread Trail funding and work with DOT to get bike ped facilities added. But it doesn't require you upon adoption to implement the plan. A question came up about liability, and there is a North Carolina General Statute 38A that states that if you as a property owner are going to give your land and allow it to be used for recreation purposes, that anyone, as long as you are not charging for someone to use that trail, anyone using the trail is treated as trespassers. And as far as the county, if you're going to own any trails, it would be the same liability that you have in any of your parks within the county. So I did want to note that it wasn't a bullet in my presentation, but because that was a comment, I wanted to touch on that. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. And what we are asking is for adoption of the plan.
Thank you, Ms. Gates. Commissioners, what questions do we have? Comments? While she's still here. Questions?
Mr. Chairman? Randy, thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think one of the, I don't know if you mentioned this in your presentation or not, but just for Rowan County and maybe statewide, what is the economic impact?
The Carolina Thread Trail is currently conducting a study for the economic impact because there's so many questions about, a community can look at the economic impact. City of Charlotte has a lot of data you can pull from. But overall, right now, there is an existing economic impact study early on when the organization was looking at an overall system of 500 miles. That was when we were first planning. And it has some numbers. That's very dated because there's 1,500 miles that are planned now. But looking at, the plan doesn't state what segments are going to be paved, what are going to be natural surface, and they bring different users. Paved surface is going to bring a lot more businesses right on top of the trail maybe than a paved through a nature preserve or an unpaved natural surface trail. So it's really hard to tell that. I've been away from the Carolina Thread Trail as an organization for a while. I know there's staff here that may know a little more about the current situation of the economic impact analysis that they're doing, but the studies are out there. And they show that it does it brings people in, it brings jobs when the trails are being constructed, property values. Mecklenburg County shows an increase of 5 to 10% on homes that are adjacent to trails. So there is definitely information out there to pull from that backs up the economic development question.
Thank you.
Other questions for Randy?
Hey, just a couple. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I used, I think it was part of the Thread Trail in Kannapolis Greenway. Mm-hmm. And it was there, I guess, before it became the Thread Trail. It was part of that. If we were not to support this resolution, how would that affect your organization, or what does it keep you from being able to do that you can't do now?
Well, it would not be a connected network of 15 counties, because a lot of those connections are made through the county property. And this is not something that's going to happen overnight. This is a 50-year plus plan. But we cannot, the organization, the Carolina Thread Trail organization, and even the communities here within the county that are working, they can only develop trails so far until they reach county area. So if the county does not adopt this, it will not be a full 15 county connected system for the overall vision for the Carolina Thread Trail.
And I think you might have said this before, but you get a lot of rumors and things that float around, and eminent domains come up a few times, and some people had asked me a couple times, and you never know if someone's just saying something because they have one side or the other. But let me ask you, and if you don't know, that's fine. But I was told that the Rankin Lake Park in Gastonia had condemned some land to give to the Carolina Thread Trail, or somehow maybe that they had condemned land for a different reason, and that land ended up going to the Thread Trail, or is that just a...
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
I live in Gastonia. I used to work for the city, so I can expand on that. So that route in Gastonia that goes along an old abandoned rail corridor for the most part, and then goes over to a creek, that was part of their overall system. As you mentioned, the Concord or Kannapolis Trail was already on the ground before Carolina Thread Trail ever came. That was the same instance with Gastonia. Yes, it is a Carolina Thread Trail corridor. It's on the map as Carolina Thread Trail, but it is their greenway that they were working on. They, as far as I know, they did, there was one holdout landowner, and then there was one property that they couldn't find the landowner. I think it changed hands, that there wasn't an estate. No one knew who the property was. I think in one instance they did threaten and start the process to use eminent domain, but I don't think they had to go that far. And in that case, when we found out that that was occurring as an organization, the Carolina Thread Trail went to that city council meeting and spoke against their use of eminent domain, and that you can pull up minutes from that meeting. We tracked that. That hurt us as an organization. We couldn't control what the city was doing, but staff and their elected leaders, we called the mayor and had her on the phone just to tell her that's not good for an organization, because we're going to hear about that throughout the 15 counties. They were going to do that regardless of if the Carolina Thread Trail was there or not. That was their local system, and that's an important connection to them. But you can go back in record and see where the organization stood on that particular case.
So the organization would never support taking anyone's property to make it part of the trail, but
Right.
if a municipality or a county did that, you guys are kind of out of the loop on that. Is that kind of the stance of the...
Right, because, the Carolina Thread Trail is a nonprofit organization, so they don't have the authority to use eminent domain whatsoever. It lies within each elected board for each community, each county. You are the ones that can decide to do something like that. Carolina Thread Trail organization can't control you in either direction. What we can control is the funding. And I see Travis Moorhead standing. He's with the Carolina Thread Trail as an organization, so I don't know if he wants to add anything. I'm kind of speaking on behalf of the organization. I'm not with them anymore, but yeah, the organization can't control, and you've done well with having an ordinance in place that you're stating that you will not use eminent domain for this project or any other economic development project here. So you're covered, and again, we support that, or the Carolina Thread Trail organization supports that. I don't know if Travis has anything to add.
Gates, you were stating that people donate the land to you. Is that what you are looking for in Rowan County?
Well, I mean, there's a number of ways that the Carolina Thread Trail or local communities or the county or the local land trust get properties for this. It can be purchased. A lot of land for this has been purchased. Landowners can donate. There are many ways they can do a bargain sale, so they give it at a discount. And again, it could be a transaction between a landowner and the land trust or the local community. The Carolina Thread Trail as an organization does not hold any easements. They do not purchase or accept donations for land. It's partner organizations that do that.
My point was back to the issue of liability has been brought up.
Right.
So if the land is taken out of the individual homeowner's name and put into one of your subsidiaries, then it pretty much excludes them from liability.
That's correct. That's correct. That liability, the general statute 38A, that's if a landowner maybe has an easement, a trail easement across their property, and something happens, that's when the North Carolina general statute 38A kicks in.
You keep talking about hundreds of miles of trails and bike paths or whatever these people want to call it. Who's going to maintain this? Who's going to take care of the trash collection? Who's going to police this? I mean, where does that responsibility fall?
The local, sorry.
What tax dollars are going to take care of this?
The local communities are, when they are developing trails, they are maintaining just within their, if it's a park, they're treating it as a linear park. So it falls within their budget that they're currently maintaining their park facilities. A lot of the current existing trails are sidewalks. So again, that kind of falls within the community that they are maintaining their sidewalks. Trails that are within the land trust areas, a lot of times it's on land trust properties they are maintaining, or they have local volunteer groups that come out and maintain trash, and they're helping to police. Some communities, their police department actually uses the trails for training if they have bikes within their police department, so they're out there. And just the general public using the trails too. There's quite a few examples of people that they're on just their daily hike and they carry trash bags in. But you'd be surprised how little they pick up, because most people that are using these facilities are treating it as they do a park. They're carrying out trash. They're taking it in, but they're carrying it out. They're leaving no trace.
So in other words, your explanation falls back to the taxpayer. At the end of the day, once these trails are implemented and put into these different municipalities and these different areas in the county, it will fall onto the taxpayer to pay for this.
That or volunteers that are helping.
Good afternoon. My name is Travis Moorhead. I'm the Director of Operations for the Carolina Thread Trail, and I'd like to address that point. Communities, just like Rowan County Commissioners, they have a choice to implement these trail programs. Each community has decided whether they will or will not. They've adopted the plan. It's up to them to decide whether they want to implement the plan. If they choose to implement the plan and they receive grant funding from the Carolina Thread Trail or other grants from the state, they do have to maintain those. As the Catawba Lands Conservancy is the lead agency for the Carolina Thread Trail, my job when I'm not working with communities is to maintain the 17 miles of trail that we've built throughout the region. We've built canoe launches, kayak launches on Catawba on conserved properties that's open to the public, 17 miles, and I mow those and I weed eat those myself. We have a group of volunteers called Trail Masters. We train them on a 4-day course. We have over 50, and they have assigned areas of trails throughout the region in which they go to maintain. So there's a volunteer effort to maintain trails, to work within their communities, to work on conserved lands, to maintain those trails. But to your point, if you decide to take on a Carolina Thread Trail project or to implement trail as a community, as a town, then yes, you will maintain it.
I just want to make sure that all these grants and everything that keep getting talked about, that's a one-time thing, and that's to put it in. Once it's in, it will be the taxpayer's responsibility to maintain it, whether it's through volunteers or whether it's through just good neighbors or whatever. It will be up to the taxpayer. So this will be a liability on the county forever and ever, as long as this trail is implemented. So we need to know that. We need to emphasize the fact this is not free. It may be, the conception may be free, but once it's there, we will have to take care of it, and it will come out of Mr. Bringle's Parks and Recreation dollars for maintenance. even though he's the mayor of China Grove and they're all for this, he needs to understand that this will become his job too. So for me, this is, some of the statements that were made here just, I can't believe that you would stand there and say this to two commissioners, that the number one thing that people ask about before relocating is about a trail. That is not true. I have talked to several employers that said their number one concern in relocating to any county is education, not a trail, not a bike trail or anything else. So to make that statement is totally false and baseless as far as I'm concerned. And I don't think a lot of the things that you've said and used examples for are accurate either. So for me, this is just it was voted on in 2009 and turned down. Why has it come back?
That was a resolution of support of the idea of connecting the communities. Now that the communities have come together, they've worked on this plan, they've adopted, and they want this plan to come before you all as a county board to try to have one unified adopted plan throughout the county.
Well, to update your history, it came back to this board as a request in 2012, 2013, and 2014. Unfortunately, the chairman of our board at that time was smart enough not to put it on for voting. I don't know why it's come back this time. It just completely floors me that one board makes a decision, then when you don't get the answer you want, you keep bringing it back. To me, it's like a 5-year-old in a candy store. He's told no, but he keeps asking and asking and asking, hoping that you'll let down your guard and make a mistake. And I think this is a mistake.
Do you have another question? Any other questions for Randy? Yes.
We don't, as far as our parks, we don't give our parks to you as the part of the land. We still own it, and we're still responsible for whatever happens on that area.
You're correct.
Just like we are now.
Right.
Any other questions while they're here to answer?
Excuse me. I'm just wondering if there's any information about how trails through biking and walking help promote physical good health.
I think the main thing and what the the county report alluded to is just having access to opportunities for recreation. So the more opportunities that you have and the closer it is to someone, they're more likely going to use it. And that's what's going to promote and help the health standing for the county.
So right now you just have anecdotal evidence. Okay.
Right.
All right, anything else? All right, well, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, commissioners, we can have discussion. We have a resolution before us. We've had some discussion, and we can have further discussion as long as we're nice. So do we have anything else we'd like to add on this? I know.
Mr. Chairman, if I could get a copy of the resolution.
I have it here. You're welcome to have it. Any other discussion?
I guess I would just like to say that in my home state, we have thousands of miles of trails for walking and biking. And one of those goes right by my farm. And I will tell you that the concerns about trash and safety, I mean, the safety issue is really not much more than normal, I guess, as far as attacks, but they're really few and far between. That's number one. Number two is we didn't have problems with trash, although we had different groups that adopted the trail to help keep it clean. And it is part of the park system. And, you know, our board and our county are very, very concerned, as well as the state, in the cost of Medicaid. And right now, when you talk about health concerns, diabetes is like the preeminent driver of other health issues. So we can lower our health care costs by helping people be closer to trails and to have them where we don't have to fight with traffic. And I just wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, that I support the resolution.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything else? Please, while I appreciate your enthusiasm, we're going to try to not do that, okay? But thank you for your excitement. Anything else?
This has been passed by 14 other counties in our area and every municipality in our county. Is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was on the planning board when this came up in 2009, and I was opposed to it then. And today I feel much more comfortable with the program than I did then. But I still have some concerns, and they're not as many as I used to. As far as the trash, I know the folks in this room are not the folks that will litter on these trails. Usually those are the people that just use it for other reasons. You know, I think most of the folks in this room are probably care for the environment, and they're not going to throw trash out there. So I think there will probably be some litter out there, but it's probably not going to be for the folks that support this this endeavor. As far as there is, I believe, some safety issues, but there's safety issues out there already. The only things that I have concerns about is what's going to happen out in the county, because I noticed that there's not an exact plan of where these things are going to go yet as far as in the county. I see on the map some of the areas are the parks, and personally I don't have that big of a problem with I really don't have a problem at all using our parks for it, but I'm worried about where it's going to go in private property. I'm still a little concerned about the eminent domain, because I don't think anyone on this board would ever take any property from someone for that, and I don't know that any of the elected officials in our county would, but I still think there's an option in the future, because I don't know who's going to be on this board in the future. So even though I think it's a very good program, and it seems like it's probably going to pass, respectfully, I can't vote for it today, but I do like the concept, and hopefully when this plan is finally, when we find where these things are going to go, and after they talk to all the property owners and everything works out, that this will be a value to our community.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Manager, can you verify, do we have an ordinance, a county ordinance? It seems to me like in the past few years we passed an eminent domain ordinance for the county. Do you know if we have that? Perhaps Commissioner Pierce or Commissioner Caskey could give some information on that.
It's my understanding that the county does have that.
Okay.
Oh, we also had an ordinance not to have alcohol on county property, and we changed that.
We changed that. Well, I'll tell you, I was also on that planning board back in 2009, which is now 6 years ago. A lot has changed in 6 years. When that was an issue 6 years ago, I think it was on the heels of pretty bad economic times, and dollars were being used in some municipalities to build greenways at the same time when schools and other functions of government were suffering significantly. And so it was a question of why are we prioritizing this over issues that we, by statute, really need to be worried about? I remember back then that there were issues that were that we've talked about tonight. To me, the big two issues have always been issue of eminent domain, issues of liability. Commissioner Green and I being insurance people. In the resolution, those of you who are visiting here tonight, you may not, I'm sure you don't have a copy of this, but in the resolution it says, whereas Article 4 of the Code of Ordinances prohibits the use of eminent domain for taking private property without consent of the owner and using said property for economic development, including the development of greenways or public trails. I've read also in other parts of the information that has been provided that they are completely and totally opposed to eminent domain. The Carolina Thread Trail would have as much authority. Understand what I'm going to say. The Carolina Thread Trail has as much authority to exercise eminent domain as Waffle House has to start taking property on Innis Street. They have no authority to exercise eminent domain. They are not a state authority. They are not a local authority. They're simply a visitor that we are allowing on our property if we choose to do so. To me, that issue became the issue to me. I still, frankly, Jim and I still have questions about the liability. But that is cleared up when you understand one simple thing. If you don't want to be part of this, then say no. It's that simple. For the last 2 years, we have all been engaged in this discussion of economic development. And whether you ever want to step foot on a trail or not, frankly, I'm too busy to right now, okay? I hope maybe one day it will appeal to me more than it does now, and I hope that I will have the time possibly to do something like that. But whether you like it or not, the fact is, whether it's the 1st or whether it's the 20th, it is an issue in economic development, and that is quality of life. And so, as we have watched our county become the donut hole in this region, we have to begin to look at all of the things that will help begin to attract businesses to our community. I agree with Commissioner Pierce. I don't believe that any multi-billion-dollar company will decide that they're coming here and pick us out on a map because we have the thread trail. But it will be one of the tools in our toolbox that we can point to that is adding to the quality of life. The facts are we are in a new economy, and we are trying to attract folks to our community that have tax dollars to spend. Those people are folks who can work where they want to work. They can work for who they want to work for. And we are trying to hold out as many positive things for them as possible to attract them to this community. I called Mr. Bringle this morning myself just to ask a few questions. I understood that they supported it in China Grove. I asked if this would be an issue for his Parks and Recreation. It's no more an issue than the current parks we have, current parks. If we don't need these things, then let's make a motion to get rid of parks. This is just an expense that the community has. And again, if you are a landowner and you don't want to be part of this, then you have the ability to say no. It will be up to this board and to further boards to change the ordinance, but they will have to do that themselves, and they can do that with or without this thread trail. They can take your property, they can change the ordinance, they can take your property with or without this thread trail. So I understand why in 2009 we had issues with this. The thread trail themselves has has recognized that they had issues in '09 that needed to be addressed. And those issues, in my mind, have been addressed to the point to where this is something that I believe, to me, thinking 99% of my time about economic development is something that would be good for our community, whether I ever step foot on it or not. And that's all I have to say. So having said that, do we have a motion?
I move to adopt the Carolina Thread Trail Greenway Master Plan for Rowan County.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no.
No.
Thank you. By my count, the ayes have it.